Hit that a little early. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is John Feuerhelm with In Your Phase Media. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you for joining me for another Wednesday hobby live stream. This week we're going to be continuing working on the Age of Sigmar terrain. If you remember, I got the Age of Sigmar scatter terrain kit as part of the Games Workshop, Game Castle monthly hobby box, and in there were paints as well as this AK interactive magazine that has the project on how to do verdigris on bronze statues. And so that's what we're going to continue working on this week. So without further ado, let's dive right in. We will get that 20-minute timer started. Here we go. Boom. Okay, 20 minutes of hobby time. So let's go ahead and switch over to the top camera. There we are. And last week, you remember, I went through and I used a few different paints. I used the Game Air from Vallejo. I used the metallic brass then from the new AK line, as well as the AK True Metal coppers. It's that wax-based, oil-based paint. So, good stuff. So, that's had a few days to dry. You can see here that copper left it kind of matte. I didn't go back over. I just went real quick, so it's not even a real solid job. Now, what's interesting about this stuff is if you put it on a little thicker, you can polish it nicely. You might be able to do like some polishing there. Oh, look at that. Even with my finger, can you see how that suddenly just brightened up? See the dullness? And then boom, catches the light. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you don't see that. Anyways, so we got that going on. And in the meantime, you see that these are no longer primed black as they were. I took a rattle can of Ushabti bone. I think that's what it was. It was the GW bone color that they recommend for using with contrast paints. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. Anyways, I took that and some junk mail, like literally just some junk mail, slick cards, and went out there and I tore up the cards and basically just, did a quick job on there. I didn't even worry about getting some overspray in a few places where I didn't do a good job masking with the card, because we're going to verdigris all of these statues anyways. And so those areas that have a little bit of overspray, I'll just make sure to put a heavier verdigris paint onto them. But for the most part, it looks pretty good. Now, the one thing I don't want is, and I think I'm going to touch this one up a little bit. You see, I got a little crazy. I was using the card, and then I used the card for too long, and it dripped onto the actual model. So you got to watch out for that. And over here, some of the skulls are still in brass. So we're going to do a little bit of touch-up, and then we're going to go ahead and go right into the contrast paints today. I already used my ink mixer to mix up all the paints, so they're good to go. And I've got my water and alcohol mix ready to go as well. That's about 10% alcohol. The rest is water. And right here off, we got our GW paint cup sitting nicely to the side. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is touch up this gray sear, because I don't technically need to shake it. And for this, might do a little bit of detail work. I got this beat up old shade brush. I don't really like to scoop the paint out with the brush so much, so I just use a little stick there. Wipe that on my paper palette. Give it just a drip of water. There we go. Yeah, maybe a little more. Another drip on there. Oh, come on. No, drip onto the paint. There we go. Well, that's probably too much. We'll be careful about that. soak up a little of that excess water. And we should end up with just the right amount. Okay, so we'll mix that paint in. Pretty thin. I don't really want any chunkiness. And again, I probably should leave it a little thicker. I'm actually going over a metallic. We'll see how that lands. So here we are. We're just going to go in here and just paint that right onto there. And we're going to do some contrast on this in a minute. But basically, I could only get so close with the bone. And this is gray cere, but honestly, there's very little difference once you put the contrast on. In fact, you'll notice that with the rattle cans, and it doesn't show as well on this one, I'll show you on the next piece, I did keep the rattle can pretty much in an upper angle. So, like if this is the plane, the part I was spraying. Oh, here's a good example. So if I'm spraying this, right, and you don't just see it there, you see a little more on the ends. Basically keeping the can kind of, in these upper angles as I do all this, so that the sides have a little more shade to them, and that'll work out nicely with the contrast paints. I find that to be one of the kind of details that makes contrast paints work just a little bit better. Is if you do it like, I wouldn't really call it zenithal highlighting, but just don't evenly coat the model, like unevenly coat it with, especially if you're using a rattle can. Watch your angles, create shadows, lines, and contrast, much like you would with an airbrush. If you're airbrushing the gray cere, or I think it's Ustabi bone. No, Ustabi bone is a tan color, but it is something bone. Maybe the chat knows. Let the chat monkey know. What's up, chat monkey? Holding down the house. Hey, everybody. And so that gray cere spread out over here. Not too worried about it. I used to go watch out for the eyes. It tended to puddle a little bit in there. What I'm doing, I can bring it up closer to the camera. So I debate back and forth between having the autofocus on and off. I still generally believe it's better with the autofocus off. Though with the autofocus on, there's at least some chance that, when I zoom in like this, you can see what's going on. It allows more zoom. Okay, we're just about done here. I just want to touch up the stone and bone in these areas. And again, I'm not real concerned if I get the contrast base coat, the gray cere here, onto the areas that I'm going to verdigris, because it's really just going to make the green. So you'll see, even if it's white still, it'll just all mix in and kind of look natural, I'm pretty sure. And at the same time, what won't look good is if we have metallic down in areas where it shouldn't. So that looks pretty good. That one looks good. That looks good. A little touch up on this one. In there. Right in the mouth area. Nice. Let's see. This one is the brass, I think. Let's see how that looks after the verdigris. Nice. Again, I kept the paint job on these, like the metallic. Get that to focus. Very streaky. Again, I'm anticipating doing that weathering effect on there. So, the unevenness of the base coats are actually going to add to the realism of the later finish coats. Sometimes too neat doesn't actually give us the best job. Put that in the middle. Sorry about that. And, I guess that is some stone there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. A little bit back over here, too. What else do we got? This one. This one, I definitely sprayed way too much on it. Look at that. Got way too much of the gray sear, but you'll see this thing is just going to get so because it's a vertical surface. Even that's going to work out because, a little bit of the copper shows through. That's good. This thing came out like really crappy. And here's the last one. I'll get a little bit on that one too. So here, see, we got this area down in here. Look at that. Feel free to criticize my brush technique there. I am horrible to paint brushes, but I make up for it by usually only buying cheap brushes. And again, just getting the metallic areas covered in here. And it's pretty wild earlier today on my way home from work. I live here I live south of San Jose, California, in a lovely town called Morgan Hill. About an hour drive to work. So anyways, when I was driving home, San Jose was being hit by a crazy, I guess they'll probably call it a hailstorm. I think it's actually sleet. I am not a cold weather type expert, but it was like chunks of Slurpee blasting down. But I mean, they were hitting hard, like big chunks of Slurpee blasting my car as I was driving home. So I'm pretty sure that's sleet. Anyways, pretty gnarly. Okay, everyone slowed down and was being chill, so it wasn't too crazy. But man, visibility. Plus, straight up, people out here do not know how to drive in the rain. Definitely don't know how to drive in no ice and snow. I just go cautious. I mean, I've driven in the mountains, obviously, and I've actually driven in Boston in a blizzard, but I don't have a huge amount of driving in the snow and ice experience, so my go-to is slow and easy, as it were, in the ice. I know some of you live in areas that get like crazy snow and stuff. You might even have some snow right now. There was snow up on the mountains around us. We got Mount Hamilton, which is where the James Lick Observatory is. Okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Good enough. Good enough for scatter terrain. Remember, we're not talking display models here, folks. We're talking scatter terrain on the table. So one, you got to consider how much use it'll see, and ultimately it's just to enhance your enjoyment of your actual game. Yeah, see, now this one in my mind got a little oof. Oh, and there I am messing up. Did you see me do that? Just getting distracted. Anyways, it got a little too much of the copper covered, right? So even though I'm going in here and we'll just kind of slap that in, I think I need to come back, and this one I'm going to touch up the metallic a bit. Now that one originally was in the copper. I brush a little bit here. Rag. A little more cleaning. That's the movie clean, right? Looks good in 20 seconds on the thing, but not that. Okay, here we go. Okay, and again, I'm going to touch up that copper. Now, I originally did it with this stuff, and this is where, like, I don't really want to bust out the mineral spirits, which is what I should do to thin it. And, of course, that's what I would also need to do to clean it. So, instead, we're just going to choose a sacrificial victim here. Now, I buy these paintbrushes, like 50 paintbrushes for $5.99. I've gotten 100 paintbrushes for $4.99. So I buy some really, really cheap brushes, and that is specifically so I can do abusive things with them like glue or oil paints or what have you, and not worry about cleaning them later. So where is that piece? Here it is. And so quickly just reestablish the copper on the gear top. Oh man, I hear my dog over there huffing and chuffing. Better not need no help there, dog. Not for 5 more minutes. You guys listened to the podcast the other week. Hear my story about how when I was recording 2 weeks ago, I left the back sliding door open so the dog could let himself in and out, because I knew I was going to be recording for a while. And he went out and caught a rat. And then I proceeded to bring the rat in the house and play with the rat by throwing it all around my living room, up in the air, bouncing off the walls and furniture for about 90 minutes. Yeah, and then just dropped the rat into his pile of toys to be discovered later. We got internal, security cameras that we were able to watch in horror all the fun a little bit later. Yeah, so uh, needless to say, not leaving door open for dog. Since I got the copper out, I might as well add a little over here as well. I said I would just let the verdigris deal with it, but handy. We'll bring a little more up. And what do I got? 4 minutes. Do a lot less contrast paint than I anticipated. Okay. So probably what we're going to end up doing, I already see where we're going to end with this. What we're going to end up doing is I'll do the contrast paint portion over the weekend or something. And then when we get together next week, I'll be finally ready to actually apply the verdigris. Unless you guys really want to see me do the contrast paints. I mean, there's no magic to contrast paints. Well, there is. The magic is in the contrast paint itself, I should say. But as far as applying them goes, it's more about speed and evenness of coverage. To use the contrast paints with a brush, what you basically do is get the entire surface of the model simultaneously wet with the paint. Then you, while it's wet, push the paint into the corners and crevices and however you want to create flows and textures, highlights, shadows, what have you. And then you let it dry like that. I mean, it's nothing special. If you try to paint contrast paint in sections, it usually doesn't work out well. You do have to basically wet the entire model. Now, you can also use contrast paints through an airbrush, but there it's a very different experience. There they become more like a shade or a filter, you might think of it as, bringing some coloration to things, and they do great shading. Okay, so that's pretty good. Of course, now I made a little more mess with this, so we'll just kind of come back. Now, yeah, I'm mixing oils and acrylics at the same time, and that's usually not a good idea, but I think it'll turn out fine in this case. Okay, there we are. That again, down to 1.5 minutes. Yeah, we're definitely finishing with a little bit of touch up. And the last, but not least, that we're going to work on is this bad boy over here, which, yes, I'm not really worried about touching up that copper there as much. But over here where it's, oh, am I totally off camera? Sorry, guys. So I'm here over where the stone is kind of underneath. I want to get a little of that. And I left the whole plinth as copper, and this base piece is not. And again, a little bit of paint on there. Not worried about that. Yeah, I think that'll do. Boom. More spots. And about the last 50 seconds anyways. And with that, I think we're going to call it. So anyways, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me for this quick little hobby live stream this week. Back on my ugly mug. Anyways, thanks again, everybody, for joining me this week in the In Your Phase Media Wednesday hobby live stream. And again, we're continuing to work on this Age of Sigmar terrain. Today, we just did a little bit of touch up after the rattle can work that I did to apply the bone color for a base for the contrast paints over here. We've allowed the metallics to well cure. And next week when we get together, we should be just in time or just ready to actually finally apply the verdigris. And if you remember, that's this project right here. And so at the end of the story, what we're going to end up doing is making all of these look like these beautiful bronze statues with some stonework and what have you. So again, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me this week. I've been your host, John Feuerhelm with In Your Phase Media. Again, check out our Age of Sigmar and 40K podcast that comes out every weekend. Look for live games on Sunday. Look for tabletop simulator tournaments ran by Garrett and all kinds of other good stuff. Also, for our Patreon sponsors, I'm going to go ahead and post some pictures of the rattle can work on our Discord channel. You want to check that stuff out, go ahead and sponsor us on Patreon. If you're into it, you can figure it out somehow. I don't have the link handy. Anyways, you guys have a great evening. We will catch you all later.